Hey everybody, my name is Blaise and I'm an animator. I've been an animator for over 30 years now, and 21 of those years were spent over at Disney, where I worked on The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Pocahontas, Mulan. I directed a film called Brother Bear. And over the years I've done a lot of character design, I've done a lot of animation, and currently I'm creating my own animated short called Snow Bear. And it's the story of a polar bear in the Arctic who's really lonely. He's all by himself. It's, you know, the Arctic is a very kind of sparsely populated place, especially for a polar bear. And so he's very lonely, and as a result, he decides to make a snow bear, and that becomes his companion. So it's a little animated short that I'm doing there, and I thought that I would take you guys through my process and how I create my characters. This is the same process that I used during Aladdin when I worked on Rajah the tiger, or in Lion King when I worked on Nala. There's a certain process that I go through. I call it the seven steps that I usually go through. These are the 7 steps that I like to hit when I'm designing characters. And so I thought it might be kind of fun to talk about how I kind of went from zero, you know, not just from concept, to creating my polar bear character for my new animated short, Snow Bear. So why don't we just go ahead and dive in? One of the first things that I do, and I drill this in on everybody when I talk about character design, before you ever sit down and put stylus to screen or pencil to paper or paintbrush to canvas or whatever it might be, you need to research. And so obviously the very first thing that I needed to do was know about polar bears. Now, I'm a bit of a wildlife buff as it is, so I knew a little bit about you know, our friends to the north, but I wanted to know as much as I could, because the more you know, especially as a creator for stories, the more you know about the real thing, the more it can inform your story. And so just the fact that polar bears live in the Arctic and they're loners, they live alone, and their population is spread out over hundreds of thousands of square miles. That alone lends itself to a really interesting story. You know, what if you were a polar bear and you had to live that way and you were lonely? That's a great story right there. And so that, through that research, and the more research I did as far as, you know, where polar bears roam. You know, polar bears don't hibernate the way the other bears do. You know, the best part of the year for a polar bear is actually in the winter, when all the other bears are hibernating. Polar bears are out on the pack ice. That's when it all freezes over and they can hunt their favorite meal, which are seals. So there's a lot of different things that you learn through your research, and that's what I did with mine. Google Images. I'd go onto television. I'd go, you know, if you have a zoo nearby, then go to the zoo. Obviously, the best thing for me would be if I had gone to the Arctic, but I haven't been able to go to the Arctic, so I need to find the next best things. And so it's anything on the internet, anything in your library. There's a television show on the Smithsonian Channel called Polar Bear Town. And that became invaluable for me. I recorded every episode, not just from understanding bears' habits, but all of a sudden there is a whole bunch of wonderful video that I was able to draw from. So that's the first step. First step is research. Just dive in and learn as much as you possibly can, because that's going to lead to the next bit. When you're researching, you're learning about the real thing. In this case, I'm learning about real bears. Now, the next thing I want to know is, what do real bears look like, okay? I want to understand them inside and out, all different angles. I want to be able to draw a bear. If I'm designing a polar bear character, I want to understand what the real thing is first, then I can caricature. If I sit down and start to try to caricature before I know how a bear is supposed to look, I'm going to struggle. Okay, it's like trying to write music in a language that you don't know. You have to know the language first before you can write the music, and that's what this is all about. So one of the first things I do is I can show you right here. Look at this. This is a polar bear skull. It's a replica. It's a cast of a real skull. But I wanted to understand, I want to understand what's happening underneath. Even though we are, quote, a lot of people call us cartoonists, meaning we draw cartoons, we draw things that are caricatured, that are pushed. It always starts with knowing the understructure. And so through doing this, I'm going to understand how they're built, the way the muscles work, and then I can extrapolate from that. I can caricature. So if you look here, once I saw that, I got the skull, I started understanding the muscles of the face, then it's understanding the muscles of the bear. And a lot of times I'll realize, or I'll find out, that bears especially, the muscles of a bear aren't that much different than us. And so that was a big discovery to understand that, our triceps and the flexors and muscles of our forearms are all the same on a bear. They're just proportioned differently. We have big muscles on our sides called latissimus dorsi. Bears have the same thing. All animals have the same muscles. Mammals have the same muscles, but just kind of proportioned in different ways. And so the next phase was trying to understand the proportions of a real bear and the muscles of the real bear. And then once I understood that, then I could sit down and I could start drawing. And so here you can see I would sit down and just sketch bear after bear after bear. So because I did all of that research, I could sit down and now I can draw a bear. And that's the other thing too. And once I understand how a real bear is built, then I can break it down into its basic forms and build it and build it and build it over and over and over again through my drawings. And so I always like to start with that basic round ball for a head. And then maybe he's got his head up in the air. Maybe he's sniffing the air. Maybe he's got his nose up here. I know that a polar bear, the profile, the line of the head goes right into the line of the nose very, very smoothly. They don't have much of a forehead. Maybe we can, and I can just sit here and no matter what the situation is, because I did all of that research, I can sit here and I can draw polar bears. There we go. He's coming up. Just get that nose. And I sit in there very, very roughly. There's those cheekbones. But I can draw polar bears in my sleep now because I've, and that's the goal because I did so much research. I know that the chest comes down here. They have pectoralis muscles that are wrapped inside just like we have. And then that because of all of their fur, their front legs seem to be really, really thick. Like so. I'll bring that body right back. There. I know the hip crust of the pelvis is right there, and the trochanter and the knees right there. Doing all of that research helps so that I can sit down and I can draw a real polar bear. I know all that, they've got, because of, they swim so much. They actually swim a lot. They're considered actually a marine mammal. So they have these their feet have evolved into these big paddles. Big feet. Have them come down like so. There we go. And they're slightly, those front feet, I'm going to turn them in slightly. There we go. Get those tricep muscles back there. All this fur coming down like that. there, just very quickly, sketch out this polar bear. So now, because I did that research, I can sit here and sketch polar bears in any attitude that I want. You know, I spent the time doing that research. And now, because I know those polar bears, I know their anatomy, I know the way that they're really drawn, the way they're really built, I can go in and I can start to caricature. So here, real quick, what I'd like to do, so I'm just gonna knock that back and we'll finish it off just very, very quickly. There, so now that I've got this roughly sketched in, I can come in and go, oh, okay, well I'm gonna pull that eye up a little closer. I know that their eyes are small. You know, they deal with a lot of wind. I get that eye set right in that socket. Just like so, there we go. There. That nose comes out like that. There. You know, they've got really, really sensitive, strong noses. So this is all set up for using their senses, using their olfactory nerves and picking up any scent they can on the wind. There we go. Dark lips. There we go. Their ears tend to be a little smaller. There's a lot of wind, a lot of cold, and that, you know, ears would be something that would be exposed and prone to frostbite if they're too big. So, and getting through this and doing all that research and understanding how this real polar bear is built, like so, and I would just come through and just continue drawing and tying all of this down, getting the fur textures right. And now, and that would become a real bear. And understanding that, being able to draw all these different bears like I've done here for you. Now it's time, now that I understand how real bears are built and how to draw them, and I can see them in 3 dimensions in my mind because I know that anatomy so well. Remember, that comes from research. It just takes time and it takes practice. Once I understand that, now I'm able to go in and I want to start thinking about my character now. Okay, now I know the real world. Now, how do I adapt it to the world that I'm creating? Now, the world that I'm creating is going to be somewhat real, but it's somewhat caricatured as well. So it's going to be an artistic interpretation of the real world. Think of films like The Lion King. The Lion King, it's caricatured, those animals are caricatured, but it's still kind of within our universe. It's not SpongeBob SquarePants. And so that's the next thing that you need to understand. What is the universe that you're creating? What is the physics? What are is it real world and it's just kind of caricatured like I'm talking about now? Is it really pushed like SpongeBob? Or is it something somewhere in between? You need to establish what that world is so that you know what you're designing to. It also goes toward your design conceit. Your design conceit is basically what's the look of what you're trying to create. Is it really designy? Like the film Aladdin. When we created Aladdin, Aladdin had very long, flowing design lines to it. The film was, the characters and the look of the film was all modeled after an artist, a caricature artist by the name of Al Hirschfeld. And he had very long, fluid line work to his work. And so we wanted the film to look that way. So every character design within that world looked like that. That's the universe that they occupied. So that's what I'm trying to explain. Just figure out what is that universe, what is the design conceit, what is the art direction, and then try to stick to that. okay? Which leads me to the next thing that you need to understand. You need to understand your story and your character before you can start designing him. I sat down with my business partner, Nick Birch, and we worked out the story inside and out, backwards and forwards, kept working it, until we understood not just the plot of the story, you know, how the story unfolds, but the character. The character in this instance is really driving the plot. It's his need for a friend. That tells us something about him. A normal polar bear, they don't care. They're just out in the wilderness, catching their seals, doing whatever they do, whatever polar bears do, and not giving a care in the world. But in this case, this is a bear in our world that we're creating that wants a friend. So that says something special. There's something there that I want to try to get across into his look. And so in looking at this really cold, sparse landscape, but understanding his character, I want something that's going to play the opposite. And here was something that before I had his design down, I sat down and I started sketching. You know, even though it's a cold, giant, lonely place, here's a polar bear all by himself making snow angels. And in our story, that's fine for a little while, but ultimately he wants to find that friend. But I wanted it to say something about his character. Here he is, like I said, in the middle of nowhere, all by himself, but he's having the time of his life creating snow angels. I need to know that character before I can start to design him. So then in the next bit, when we start to design our character, now the next thing is to not settle too soon, okay? When you sit down and you start to draw, don't be afraid to experiment. When I started drawing on Snow Bear, I started, sometimes I wanted to see, okay, even though we have a realistic world that we're creating, what if we did something that was really kind of cartoony? You know, what if he was really cartoony, like so? Big snout. You know, something like this. I started off at first. I thought, well, you know, it's okay. We'll just color that in. I thought it's actually not too bad. You know, that's a first idea. But I wanted something more. First of all, I wanted, you know, just having those black eyes, that wasn't enough expression for me. I wanted more expression. So what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll just do drawing over drawing. You can do it with paper as well. So here, maybe I come back out. Maybe I go a little bigger with the eyes. And now I can get some expression with them, you see? And that started to hit on something that I kind of liked, you know, and then I still have this big honking nose that comes out like so. Maybe, you know, in this particular drawing, maybe I can play with expression a little bit more. So maybe here, I try bringing his mouth up a little bit more. You know, I experiment. I like to experiment with expression, so you can see I'm pushing the cheeks right up into the eye. I'll pull that up. Maybe add some fur down in there. And once again, I kind of kept that neck the same. And I thought, well, that's okay. I kind of like that. But I wanted mine to not be quite as cartoony. I wanted to be, and I'm giving you the abbreviated version of this because I spent days playing with different ideas. Lots and lots of different ideas. But there's something that I thought, well, that's interesting. That might be able to play. But what if I turn that one off? What if I knock this down again? Actually turn that back on, but I'll knock it way down. Now, I kind of like the size of his eye. But now, and I like that slope coming up, you know, the head. But what if I come down, what if we go a little more easy on that nose? I wanted something that was a little bit more real. Just a touch more real. Just like so. There we go. Get the eye in there. Maybe push the expression just a touch. There. I'm going to squash that mouth up a little bit. And then what this does is, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to knock this way down. There. Get a nice break there in the where the nasal bone is. Now I can pull that snout up a little bit. And I'm going to keep this size. So now I got a nice wedge shape to the head. Excuse me. There we go. And then I can let that beard start up a little higher. I wanted to get a little more fluidity in his neck. So I added a little bit more muscle. Just a touch of fluidity you can see there. I'll let those ears come off. So now all of a sudden I started to hit on something. Well, it wasn't all of a sudden. It took a couple of days to get there. But I started to hit on something that I kind of liked. So there's a design that I thought, ooh, this is interesting. I kind of like that. Let's try a different angle. So now what I would do is I can move that off to the side. And now let's try something different. What if he's looking, what would he look like in profile? Blow that up a little bit. Maybe make his mouth just a little smaller. And have that head sloping back like so. I know that jaw has got to come right up into here. There we go. But that beard, maybe that beard comes off right around in here. You know, I learned all this off of my research, right? There's that fluidity that I wanted to try to get in the neck. Maybe he's got his ears perked up a little bit. And then right here, get those eyes. There we go. And now I'm starting to get something that I really like here. There's an innocence to this guy, but there's also reality. It's believable in my mind. The world that he inhabits could be the same world that we inhabit. Which is that, that's the design that I wanted to go after. There we go. Let's give him a little bit of a brow. Some brow there. There. Cheekbones coming up. Let that come right down into there. And all of this becomes fur. There we go. So let me clean this up because that got messy. This should come down. Come right into there just like that. Maybe there might be a little bag under the eye. But now you can see I've got a character that I'm playing with, that I like, that I think has some nice appeal, and it's not too far off of the real deal. And if I knock that back, I can sit down and I can get some nice detail on them. Maybe there's some fur that comes off there. There we go. I like that break right there. I really like having that. You know, that break right there is it's right here. This where it goes into the cartilage. Right here, that's that break right there. It creates a little ridge in the nose. But I wouldn't know that had I not done my anatomy research. So that's why it's so important to do all of that research up front. There we go. There's something about this mouth that I'm liking. It's very bear-like, the way that it's built. The way the upper lip hangs over the bottom jaw. And then, you know, through my research on anatomy, I know that canine sits underneath the snout there, and this bulges out a little bit, so it creates, you know, some of the shapes that we have that I can see in the muzzle. There we go. Have that come right back. This will all feed right into that nice long sloping forehead that it's so pleasing to look at. There we go. Maybe some fur breaks coming off of here. And I know that we'll see some breaks coming down that way. There. And all of this, you know, I've got these nice smooth lines up here, and I can play those smooth lines off of this fur coming down. This creates a nice contrast. There. So, you know, by not settling too soon, by being experimental, I'm able to sit down and have some fun and thinking about who my character is, start drawing and try to capture that personality, try to capture that is the pleasing aesthetic that I'm trying to look for in the design of the film, and then kind of get it all together into one character. And so that's what I've done right here, just like so. But when I get to this point, that's not the end. Now I want to start playing with expression. You know, what if you know, now that I've got basically a design that I like, what if we played with the expression a little bit? You know, what if he was sad? You know, at some point he might be sad because he's so lonely. You know, maybe his head is down. And because now I've kind of done the research and I've put the work into the design, now I can I'm not really focusing on the design as much as I'm focusing on how do I get that design to emote. You know, what are some of the expressions that he can show? So maybe he's got his eyes closed. He's upset. He's lonely. You know, at some point in the story, he's going to see some other animals that he wants to befriend them. But he's a polar bear, and so he tries to, reach out to them, and they just flip out and run away. And that's one of the reasons why in this shot right here, he's just sad, like so. There's those cheeks coming down and around. His ears would be down, way down in here maybe. There we go. Sad. Get those nostrils. There we go. Poor guy. Maybe that neck is, I go up into his shoulders and maybe he's sitting. The neck comes down and around, but maybe he's sitting. Like so, you know, he's sitting and just has his head hanging low. So I want to explore different attitudes. That gives me even more. Let me pull that back. That gives me more information. You know, as I discover expressions and attitudes that I like, I can bank them. I can put them off to the side. I can remember them. Okay. So then once I do that, then one of the things I love to do is I like to go back and kind of look at the story as a whole and find moments, key moments in that story that I can illustrate with my characters. For instance, here I went through, once I had a design that I liked, I went through and there's a scene in the story where they're looking up into the sky. He's made a snow bear and they've become buddies, and we see them doing all kinds of different things through this big musical montage. And at one point they're just doing something simple like we've all done when we were kids, laying on the ground and looking at shooting stars. And so I just thought that could be a sweet little moment. And so once I had that design down, then I was free to go off and explore different moments in the story. So there's that. Here's an actual model sheet that I actually put together once I had some initial ideas on him that I liked. You can see some of these poses are very familiar, but you can see he's not that much different from a real polar bear. I've just stripped away all the stuff that we don't need and kept the things that we did need and pushed those expressions, pushed those attitudes. Here's another one where he's actually making the snow bear. And these are just little sketches that I played with to try to get body attitude. So he's created this little pile of snow and he smoothed it all out. Now he's put the head on, and you can see he's putting the snout on. But I wanted to create something that, in the same way that we would make our own little snowmen, our polar bear is making a snow bear. So I wanted to get all the same attitudes, but how would a bear do it? And how would a bear in the same design that I just created, how would he do it? And so once I came up with these, then it comes time for basically the last step. And that's to experiment with some animation. I sat down, and at one point, this was kind of fun. I just wanted to see, what would he be? Okay, he's a big, fat, happy bear. How do I move him? I just thought I'd make him jump. Just 20 drawings and just make him jump. I try to get something that's fun and happy out of it. It's a bit human-like, but I just thought, wow, this could be really cute. And it's just, like I said, it's just moving him around. That's all I did. There we go. But now you can see this process that we've gone through, you know, starting with research, then going into understanding the real anatomy so that I can then caricature that anatomy, then understanding the story, understanding the universe, and then getting in there and playing with some of the character designs, and then finally getting to where we can animate. It takes that work. It takes all that setup time in order to get to this point for me, so that I can create something that's animating across the page that's believable. Like here is, you know, this isn't just a bear jumping up and down. This is a big, happy, you know, big floppy, happy-go-lucky bear that's doing that. And I wanted you to feel this character just through this jump. I just wanted you to understand his personality a little bit. And so that's what that was. And so then I came up with another test. And this was once I came up with his design and I liked it, and after I did, the jumping up and down and just kind of did some general movement, then I wanted something that at least had a little bit of an attitude and I could focus on facial features and something a little bit more subtle. So, and I wanted to move him around in space again. So I just came up with a scene where he wakes up, and in my mind, he wakes up in the morning and the snow bear is gone. Something's happened to the snow bear and he doesn't know what to do. And so he's trying to figure out what's going on. Once again, that's the backstory in my head, but the whole idea is just to understand how to move this character around and get a little bit of subtle kind of a concerned expression and playing with overlap and, how much can I move the facial features around. So you can see it's rough, but I'm moving him around, playing with proportion, playing with getting that body to turn in space. You can see when he pops his head up, I've added subtle overlap on the cheeks. Those are the soft parts, but then kept other parts, where the cranium is, kept keeping that solid. But watch, he comes up, you can see the fur comes up, the ears come up, the cheeks come up, all of that just to give him a sense of fleshiness. And so I played with that a little bit. Let it play one more time. So that for me, that was a success for me, because now I've gotten to this point after all of that drawing and animating the character. Now he's becoming real to me. When I think of the polar bear now and snow bear, I don't think of this cartoon. I don't think of this drawing. I think of a real bear. In my mind, he's real now. I've spent so much time making him real. Another thing that I do is once I finish those tests like that, I'll pull the key drawings and I'll create model sheets like you see here. I'll create model sheets to help me remember how to draw him and to take shots that I felt were successful and drawings of the character that I thought were successful, and I put them up to where I can look at it and it'll remind me, okay, this is how I drew him. Because over time, and you'll see it in some Disney films, over time, the way we draw our characters will change, and so it's important to maintain the consistency of the look of your character. And in order to do that, oftentimes I'll create model sheets like this, and I'll put them up on the wall, and I can always refer back to them. Okay? And then one last thing that I did, if you remember the shot where our polar bear character is looking up into the sky with Snow Bear right here, I thought this might be fun to animate. So now I'm actually going in and grabbing little pieces of the story and animating them. What would that, what might that look like? And so I sat down and created a shot right here where he is laying down on the ground. I'm going to move this back really fast, but he's laying on the ground. This is just the background. And he's looking across the sky and he sees the shooting star and he gets excited and he looks up. This will be in the actual animated short. It's subtle, but there it is. So I finally got to where I could animate the character and get him into a shot into the short. So that's the entire process it took me to get to this point where I'm sitting here animating a character. And you can see, especially at the end here, he's got a lot of character in his face. He's got a lot of emotion. He's emoting something, and you can see personality. And it took all of those 7 steps that I was talking about in order to get to that point. So let's go over those 7 steps again. It's first, research. Get in there and learn everything you can about your subject, okay? If you're talking about, if you've got something in the jungle, if you've got something in the Arctic like myself, learn everything you can about it. The next thing is learn how to draw the character, the real animal. Like in this instance, it was a polar bear. I went in there and I understood the skeletal structure, the musculature. I understood the proportions of a real bear. I understand the difference between a male and a female as far as size and the way the muscles are built. I went through and I did all of that research and learned how to draw it so that when I get to my next bit, which is knowing your story and character, I can start taking those realities and start caricaturing them in my mind as I'm writing the story. So that was the next bit. As we wrote, you might not be the writer of your story, but even if you're not the writer, when it comes time to design, you need to know that story and you need to know that character inside and out. The other thing too is, remember, know your universe. Know the world that your character is set in. Understand the physics. Is it the world of SpongeBob SquarePants? Or is it the world of this here, which is more of a realistic world? Is it, my polar bear in an Arctic world that, in my mind, is it's our world? Okay, so understand your design conceit, understand the art direction, understand the rules of your world. And then the other thing too, now it's time to start drawing. So sit down, start playing, experimenting, play with the different looks, play with proportions. That's key. You don't want to settle too soon. I spent days going over different proportions, different ideas, different expressions before I finally settled on the design that you saw right here. Before we got to this point, it took a lot of refinement getting to this point and understanding that, okay, this is the character that I want to animate through the course of the story. So make sure that you don't settle too quickly. And then once I've done that, then it's time to start exploring different attitudes, different expressions, different moods, that sort of thing. And just have fun with it. Find all different, and like I said earlier, I would go into the story and find moments in the story. That always, because it tends to be difficult just to sit here and go, okay, I'm going to come up with a mad character. I'm going to come up with a sad character. It's easy, or it's not as hard when you have a story behind it. So when I sit down and go, oh, okay, here's a scene where he's laying in the snow and they're watching the night sky looking for shooting stars, and all of a sudden he sees one, he gets excited. I can draw that. That to me is a very clear picture in my head. So go back into your story once you have a design that you like and start experimenting with some of those attitudes, because you'll make discoveries that way too. Your design will take another leap forward. And then if you're an animator, and for me, I'm an animator, the next step for me was to sit down and start exploring through moving the character and animating them. So I hope you learned something. It's a big drawn out process, but it works every time if you do it in the way that I've explained. This is the way I've done it on every film that I've worked on at Disney, and that's how I'll work on every film in my future. I love this process. You need to really love to learn and to draw and to express, and that's something that I can't get enough of. So I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed talking to you, and get out there, do some more drawing, have some fun designing, put some beauty into the world, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.